The blood-red roses tasted like a funeral. I stood at the edge of the glittering ballroom, watching my husband charm a woman whose emerald necklace cost more than my mother's house. 3 years of marriage, and I'd learned to recognize that particular smile, the one that meant I'd already ceased to exist. Roger Rivera had always been exceptional at erasing people. The charity gala was everything he thrived on. Violence dressed in Armani, blood money laundered through philanthropy, senators breaking bread with men who broke bones for a living. I'd stopped questioning the late-night meetings 18 months ago, right around the time I noticed that people who crossed Roger had a way of disappearing. My phone vibrated in my clutch. A text from my friend Diane. "Did you ask him about brunch Sunday?" I pulled out my phone to respond when Roger's voice sliced through the string quartet. Ice wrapped in velvet. He was 20 feet away, phone pressed to his ear, his salt and pepper hair gleaming under the chandeliers. His jaw was set in that particular way that made grown men flinch. "I don't care what excuse you manufacture. Fix it, or I'll fix you myself." The champagne in my stomach turned to acid. This wasn't the Roger who kissed donors' wives and posed for charity photos. This was the man people whispered about in the dark corners of Chicago. I started typing a reply to Diane, then noticed something that made my blood freeze. My text from 10 minutes ago asking Roger if he wanted me to bring him a drink showed as delivered, but unread. I backed out of the message thread, scrolled up. Everything I'd sent today, 5 messages, all unread. A cold, sick realization wrapped around my throat like hands. I opened my phone settings with trembling fingers, scrolled to blocked contacts, and the world tilted sideways. My own number. He'd blocked me. At his own party. While I stood 20 feet away, wearing the diamond bracelet he'd given me for our anniversary. "Mrs. Rivera." A voice beside me made me gasp. A man I'd never seen before materialized from the crowd, tall, dressed in a black suit that screamed expensive rather than security. But his eyes were wrong. Too focused. Too predatory. Mediterranean features, dark hair swept back, a presence that made the air feel thinner. "You need to come with me." "I'm sorry." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Your husband. He's waiting for you. Upstairs. Private meeting." His accent was subtle. Italian, maybe. But something in his tone made my spine stiffen. I didn't know there was an upstairs meeting. "There is now." His hand moved toward my elbow, confident, not quite touching, but the threat was clear. I stepped back. "I'll wait for Roger here." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. "Mrs. Rivera." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Please don't make this more complicated than it needs to be." The ballroom suddenly felt suffocating.
Too many people.
Too much noise. I searched for Roger across the room, but he'd vanished. Victor, Roger's head of security, the man who'd been shadowing us all night, was nowhere to be seen. None of Roger's usual detail was visible. The stranger's hand finally touched my elbow. Gentle, firm, final. "This way." My Louboutins clicked against the marble as he guided me through a service door I'd never noticed before, despite attending this gala 3 years running. We moved through a narrow hallway lined with oil paintings of Chicago's founding families, men whose fortunes were built on violence they'd learned to hide behind philanthropy. "Where are we going?" "You'll understand soon." We climbed a staircase I didn't know existed. Stopped at a door carved from dark wood that looked older than the building itself. He knocked twice.
Paused.
Knocked once more. Some kind of signal. The door opened from inside. He placed his hand on the small of my back, still gentle, still utterly in control, and guided me forward into darkness. The room was barely lit except for the Chicago skyline bleeding through floor-to-ceiling windows. A silhouette stood against the glass, hands clasped behind his back. Too broad-shouldered to be Roger.
Too still.
Too dangerous. "Leave us." The voice was smoke and gravel, textured like aged whiskey and buried secrets. The door clicked shut behind me with the finality of a coffin lid. The figure turned, and my breath died in my throat. He was beautiful the way a loaded gun is beautiful, all lethal lines and controlled violence. Sharp cheekbones, A jaw that could have been carved from granite, dark eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. His black suit was impeccably tailored, and a thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him the look of someone who'd survived things that would have killed softer men. His dark hair was swept back, revealing a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings of fallen angels. Lori Rivera. He said my name like he was weighing my life in his mouth, deciding if it was worth keeping. I couldn't find my voice. Do you know who I am? I shook my head, my diamond bracelet suddenly feeling like handcuffs. My name is Vincenzo Moretti. He moved closer, each step deliberate, measured, like a predator who'd already calculated every possible escape route. And your husband owes my family $30 million. The floor dropped out from under me. That's impossible. Is it? He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, leather and gunpowder, and something darker, something that smelled like power. Tell me, Mrs. Rivera, what exactly do you think your husband does for a living? He runs investment firms. Real estate portfolios. Vincenzo's smile was slow, predatory, and absolutely terrifying. Real estate?
Yes.
I suppose you could call it that. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen with long, elegant fingers, and held it up to my face. If by real estate you mean laundering money for the Calabrese syndicate through property acquisitions. You're lying. Am I? The screen showed photographs, bank statements with Roger's signature, property deeds linked to shell corporations, meeting photos of Roger with men whose faces I recognized from federal indictments, documents with numbers that made my head spin, transfers, accounts, offshore holdings. And then a single document that made the blood drain from my face, a life insurance policy. $7 million. Beneficiary, Roger Manuel Rivera. Insured, Lori Elena Rivera. He took this out 6 months ago, Vincenzo said softly, watching my face like he was reading a book written in my terror. You're worth more to him dead than alive, Mrs. Rivera. The phone slipped from my nerveless fingers. Vincenzo caught it before it hit the ground, reflexes like a snake, and straightened, his dark eyes never leaving mine. The question is, he said, sliding his phone back into his jacket, are you going to let him collect? The room spun, but Vincenzo's hand shot out, steadying me by the elbow before I could collapse. His grip was surprisingly gentle for someone who looked like he could snap necks without breaking a sweat. Sit, he commanded, guiding me to a leather chair that probably cost more than my first car. I sank into it, my silk dress suddenly feeling like a shroud. Why are you telling me this? Vincenzo moved to a bar cart, poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler, and pressed it into my shaking hands. Because you're the only leverage I have against a man who thinks he's untouchable. I took a sip. The whiskey burned, but it cleared the fog. I don't understand. Your husband skimmed $30 million from a deal with my family. Money that was supposed to flow through his real estate holdings to us. Instead, Roger pocketed it. Vincenzo's jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw genuine rage beneath his controlled exterior. He thought the Calabrese syndicate would protect him. But even they won't shield a thief forever. So, he's planning to
run.
Yes. Vincenzo pulled out another document, this one showing airline tickets. Monaco. Friday. 2 tickets under false names. Roger Manuel Diaz and Isabel Fontaine. The name hit me like a fist. Isabel? His assistant. His mistress. For 8 months now. Vincenzo's eyes held something almost like pity. She works at his investment firm. The one you probably think is legitimate. My hands tightened around the glass until I thought it might shatter. And I'm just what? Collateral? Your $7 million in insurance money that pays off a portion of his debt and buys him time to disappear before my family finds him. Vincenzo leaned against the window, the city lights casting shadows across his scarred face. A car accident. Thursday night. Brake line failure on a quiet stretch of road.
Clean.
Tragic. The grieving husband collects and vanishes. Thursday. 3 days away. Why help me? My voice cracked. If he owes you money, why not just kill him? Because I want him to suffer first. The words were delivered with such cold precision that my blood froze. I want him to watch everything he built crumble. His empire, his reputation, his freedom. And you, Mrs. Rivera, are going to help me do exactly that. I can't. You can. Vincenzo moved closer, crouching so we were eye level. You can access his office,
His accounts.
his safe. Everything I need to destroy him is in that house, and you're the only one who can get it without triggering suspicion. What if I refuse? His smile was cruel. Then enjoy your last 3 days. Footsteps echoed outside the door. Heavy, purposeful. Vincenzo's head snapped toward the sound, his entire body tensing like a coiled spring. Victor, he whispered. Roger's security. The door burst open. Victor filled the frame, 6'4" of Russian muscle and loyalty, his hand already moving toward the gun beneath his jacket. Mrs. Rivera, step away from him. My heart hammered against my ribs. Victor's eyes moved between us, calculating, suspicious. His hand touched his earpiece, ready to report to Roger. I had 1 second to decide. Let Victor take me back to my husband who planned to kill me, or become something I'd never been before. Something dangerous. I stood, closing the distance to Vincenzo in 2 steps, grabbed his face with both hands, and kissed him. His surprise lasted a fraction of a second before he responded, his hand sliding to the small of my back, pulling me closer. The kiss was electric, furious, entirely for show, but it sold the story. When I pulled back, I turned to Victor, letting him see the guilt and defiance I didn't have to fake. Tell Roger I'll be down in 5 minutes. Victor's expression was stone, but his eyes burned with judgment and certainty. His finger pressed against his earpiece. Sir, he said quietly, we have a situation. Vincenzo's whisper brushed my ear as Victor retreated. Good choice, Mrs. Rivera. Now the real performance begins. The women's lounge was all gold mirrors and marble, a gilded cage that suddenly felt suffocating. I braced myself against the sink, staring at my reflection. Perfectly styled hair, flawless makeup, a woman who looked nothing like someone whose husband was planning her murder. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. 6 months. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Roger's sudden fascination with my schedule, asking what time I left for yoga, which route I took. I just want to know you're safe, darling. The way he'd insisted I drive myself more often, saying his driver was needed for business. You're independent, Lori. I love that about you. Every tender word had been reconnaissance. Every kiss a countdown. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The image loaded slowly, my silver Mercedes in our garage, photographed from an angle that meant someone had been inside our home. A red X marked the driver's side wheel well. The text beneath made my stomach drop. Break line. Thursday.
V.
3 days. 72 hours before Roger turned me into a tragic accident. I needed to leave.
Now.
I smoothed my dress, forced my breathing steady, and walked back into the ballroom with my head high. Roger was across the room, laughing with the mayor, his hand resting possessively on Isabel's lower back. She was beautiful in that effortless French way, her red dress clinging to curves I'd worked hours in the gym to maintain. I moved toward the exit, keeping my stride casual, unhurried. Victor materialized from the crowd like a shadow given form. Leaving already, Mrs. Rivera? I have a headache. I'm going home. His massive frame blocked the doorway. Mr. Rivera insists you stay until the end of the evening. Not a request. An order. I'm his wife, not his prisoner. Victor's expression remained impassive, but his meaning was crystal clear. Tonight, I was both. I turned back to the ballroom, panic rising in my throat. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I caught a glimpse of the parking area. Vincenzo's black Aston Martin idling in the shadows beyond the valet station, predatory and waiting. My eyes scanned the room, searching for options. The main exits were covered. Victor had positioned 2 more security guards by the service entrance. Roger's men had formed a perimeter without anyone noticing. Then I saw it, a red fire alarm pull station near the coat check. It was reckless, illegal, It would cause chaos, investigations, questions. But I'd learned something crucial in the past hour. Survival required becoming someone I'd never been before. Someone who fought back. I grabbed a champagne flute from a passing waiter, moved toward the coat check as if retrieving my wrap, and stumbled deliberately. The glass shattered against the marble, drawing startled gasps. In the commotion, I yanked the fire alarm. The sound was deafening, piercing shrieks that sent the crowd into immediate panic. Sprinklers erupted from the ceiling, drenching Chicago's elite in cold water. Women screamed. Men cursed. Security rushed to manage the chaos. I slipped through the pandemonium toward the kitchen entrance, my heels abandoned somewhere in the flood. The kitchen staff was evacuating through the back exit, and I moved with them, just another body in the surge. The alley was dark and rain-slicked. A black sedan sat idling, driver's door open. Mrs. Rivera. A man in a dark suit gestured urgently. Mr. Moretti is waiting. I looked back once, saw Victor burst through the exit, his eyes scanning the crowd, his hand pressed to his earpiece reporting my escape. Then I got in the car, and the door slammed shut on the life I'd known. The car tore through Chicago's streets, rain hammering the windshield like bullets. Vincenzo sat beside me in the back seat, his presence filling the space with controlled tension. The driver, silent, professional, took corners at speeds that made my stomach lurch.
Why?
My voice cut through the sound of rain and racing engine. Why help me? What do you really want? Vincenzo's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the passing city lights. 2 years ago, Roger murdered my younger brother. The words hung in the air like smoke. Marco was 23. Brilliant. Reckless. His voice remained steady, but something raw flickered beneath. There was a territory dispute over the South Side ports. Marco went to negotiate. They found him 3 days later in his apartment, single gunshot to the head, staged to look like suicide. How do you know it was Roger? Because Marco called me minutes before he died. Said Roger wanted to talk privately. I heard the fear in his voice. Vincenzo finally looked at me, and the grief in his eyes was carefully buried beneath years of rage. Roger's been untouchable ever since. Protected by the Calabrese family, too valuable to eliminate. Until he got greedy. So, I'm just leverage. You're the key to everything I need. His office. His safe. His offshore accounts. The evidence that will bury him. He leaned forward, tapping the driver's shoulder. Pull over here. We stopped outside a pulsing nightclub, bass reverberating through the walls. Vincenzo held out his hand. Your phone. I hesitated, then handed it over. He lowered the window and tossed it into a dumpster, without ceremony. Roger's tracking everything you do. That life ends tonight. We drove to Ukrainian Village, stopping at a nondescript brick building. The apartment was sparse, safe house, not home. Vincenzo spread documents across a steel table like evidence at a crime scene. Airline tickets. Monaco. Friday, 6:15 p.m. 2 passengers, Roger Manuel Diaz and Isabel Loron. Property deeds for a villa overlooking the Mediterranean, purchased 3 months ago under Isabel's maiden name. Bank statements showing systematic withdrawals, money being moved to untraceable accounts. Then he laid down the final document, and my blood turned to ice. A coroner's report template. Official letterhead. My name already typed in, Lori Elena Rivera, 29 years old. Cause of death. Blank. Date. Blank. Everything else meticulously prepared, waiting only for Thursday night to fill in the final details. He's done this before, I whispered. Vincenzo's silence was confirmation enough. Dawn broke over Chicago in shades of gray and gold. Vincenzo handed me a burner phone, the numbers already programmed.
Call him.
Sell the performance, or this ends badly for both of us. I'm so sorry. I let my voice crack, injecting just enough alcohol-slurred confusion. I got overwhelmed, everything was so chaotic, and Diane was there, and we went back to her place, and I had too much wine, and I took a shuddering breath. I fell asleep. My phone died. My hands shook as I dialed. It rang 3 times. Lori. Roger's voice was frantic, perfectly calibrated concern. Where the hell are you? Victor said you disappeared during the fire alarm.
Up.
The pause lasted 3 seconds too long. Come home, darling. His voice shifted to honey-sweet poison, the tone he used when he was most dangerous. I was worried sick. I closed my eyes, seeing that coroner's report with my name printed in cold, official type. I'm on my way. Vincenzo was already shaking his head, mouthing the word no. But I'd made my choice. To destroy Roger, I had to walk back into the monster's den. And this time, I'd be the one setting the trap. The Rivera mansion loomed against the morning sky like a tombstone carved from brick and limestone. I'd always thought it was beautiful, the sprawling Lincoln Park estate with its manicured gardens and iron gates. Now it felt like a mausoleum, where I was the body waiting to be interred. Roger stood in the foyer as I entered, still wearing last night's tuxedo pants and an unbuttoned dress shirt. His salt and pepper hair was disheveled in a way that would have seemed endearing 48 hours ago. Lori. He crossed to me in 3 strides, pulling me into an embrace that felt like a cage closing. I was going insane. Victor said, "You just vanished." I'm sorry. The lie slid out effortlessly, smooth as silk. Everything happened so fast with the alarm, and I panicked. Diane was right there, and my phone died, and...
Sure.
His hand stroked my hair, the gesture tender and terrifying. You're home now. That's all that matters. I pulled back, forcing myself to meet his eyes. Really look at him for the first time since Vincenzo shattered my world. The dark eyes I'd once thought were soulful now held only calculation. His hand rested on my lower back, possessive, controlling, a touch that promised both protection and destruction. You must be exhausted, he murmured. Let me have Maria make us breakfast. We sat in the sunroom overlooking the garden, morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Maria, our chef, prepared eggs Benedict with the efficiency of someone who'd learned not to ask questions. Roger watched me eat, his gaze never wavering. I've been thinking, he said, cutting into his omelet with surgical precision. We need time away. Just us. No business, no distractions. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Oh, I've arranged a surprise. Thursday evening, we'll drive up to the lake house, Wisconsin. Remember how much you loved it there? His smile was warm, genuine, the smile that had made me fall in love with him. A chance to reconnect. Thursday. The brake line. Winding country roads in the middle of nowhere. That sounds perfect. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. I've missed us. His thumb traced circles on my palm. So have I, darling. That afternoon, while Roger locked himself in his study for a conference call with his investment team, I made my move. The study door had a biometric lock, but I'd watched him enter the code 100 times, his mother's birthday, reversed. The room smelled like leather and lies. His desk was immaculate, everything precisely arranged. But the locked drawer on the right side, the one he thought I didn't know about, that's where secrets lived. I'd learned to pick simple locks from a documentary about cat burglars. It had seemed like useless knowledge at the time. Now it took me 45 seconds and a hairpin. The burner phone was cheap, disposable, the kind you bought with cash and destroyed after use. I powered it on, my heart hammering against my ribs. The messages loaded. Roger and Isabel.
Months of them.
The early ones were banal affair cliches, stolen moments, passionate declarations, complaints about the wife who didn't understand him. But the recent messages made my hands shake. Roger, after Thursday, we're free. The accident will be clean. No suspicions. Isabel. And the insurance money? Roger. Processes within 30 days. We'll be in Monaco long before anyone asks questions. Isabel. I'll be waiting, mon amour. Don't lose your nerve. Roger, I never do. The study door opened. I had 2 seconds, shoved the phone back, closed the drawer, spun to face the bookshelf as Roger entered. Looking for something? His voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp. Just admiring your collection. I pulled out a first edition Hemingway. You have exquisite taste. He crossed to me, taking the book from my hands, setting it back precisely where it belonged. Yes, he said softly, his fingers trailing along my jaw. I do. The restaurant in Chinatown looked abandoned from the street, darkened windows, a faded sign in Mandarin, the kind of place tourists walked past without a second glance. Vincenzo led me through a kitchen that smelled of ginger and secrets, down concrete stairs that descended into a basement lit by a single bare bulb. 3 people waited around a steel table that had seen better decades. Lori, meet your survival team. Vincenzo gestured to a man with ice-blue eyes and Slavic features. Alexei. Former FSB. He can break any digital system Roger has. Alexei nodded, his gaze assessing me like I was a problem to be solved. Your husband's security is competent, but competent has holes. Yuki. Vincenzo indicated a slight Japanese woman with silver-streaked hair and hands that moved with surgical precision. She can forge anything: passports, death certificates, Swiss bank authorizations. I've already started your new identity, Yuki said, sliding a passport across the table. My face stared back, but the name read Laura Brennan. In case you need to disappear quickly. The third person made my breath catch. A woman, maybe 35, with a scar that ran from her temple to her jaw and eyes that had witnessed horrors I couldn't imagine. Sophia, Vincenzo said quietly. She escaped the Provenzano family in Sicily. Sophia's smile was sharp as broken glass. I know what you're feeling, Kara. The disbelief. The shock that the man you loved is planning your murder. She leaned forward. That shock will get you killed. You need to become someone else. Someone dangerous. I don't know if I can. You already have. Vincenzo spread blueprints across the table, layouts of my own home, detailed down to air ducts and security cameras. You picked the lock on Roger's desk. You lied to his face. You're learning. But what you need to understand, Alexei interjected, tapping a section of the blueprint, is that Roger's biometric safe contains something bigger than evidence of your planned murder. It contains the Black Ledger. What's that? Every transaction. Every corrupt official. Every dirty cop on the Calabrese syndicate's payroll. Vincenzo's eyes gleamed with predatory focus. That ledger brings down Roger's entire organization. It's what I actually need. The words hit like cold water. So I'm just collateral benefit, Vincenzo finished. Your survival matters, Lori. But it's not my primary objective. I stood, the chair scraping concrete. You said you'd help me. I am helping you by teaching you to help yourself. He caught my wrist, not rough but immovable. Sit down. I didn't move. Sophia's voice cut through the tension. When my husband decided I knew too much, he had his brothers beat me nearly to death. 3 cracked ribs. Fractured skull. They dumped me in the Mediterranean. Her fingers traced the scar on her face. A fisherman found me. While I was recovering and hiding, my family held my funeral. I watched from behind a dumpster as my mother wept over an empty casket. The basement felt suffocating. I had a choice then, Sophia continued. Accept that I was dead and live small, or become the thing that terrified them. She stood, moving close enough that I could see the rage burning beneath her calm. Mercy is what gets women like us killed. Hesitation is what gets us buried. You want to survive Thursday? Stop being Roger's wife and become his nightmare. Vincenzo released my wrist. The safe requires fingerprint and retinal scan. We have 3 days to teach you how to bypass both, access the ledger, and get out alive. I looked at the faces around that table, survivors, criminals, ghosts who'd clawed their way back from death. Then teach me, I said. Sophia's smile was terrifying and triumphant. Good. Let's make you a monster. Wednesday evening, I sat in the Rivera Mansion's guest bedroom, the only room without cameras, a detail Alexei had confirmed by scanning the entire house while Roger was out, meeting investors. The secure phone Vincenzo had given me buzzed against my palm, the vibration making my heart stutter. Unknown sender. Encrypted message. The photograph loaded in fragments, pixels assembling into an image that made the world tilt sideways. A woman. Dark hair threaded with silver.
High cheekbones.
Eyes that held the particular exhaustion of someone who'd survived the unsurvivable. She stood in front of a coffee shop, the timestamp in the corner reading 3 days ago. But it was her face that stopped my breath. I'd seen it 100 times in Roger's private study, the oil portrait hung above his desk, ornate gold frame, fresh flowers placed beneath it every week. The plaque read, "In loving memory of Elena Rivera, 1987 to 2019. Beloved wife. Gone too soon." The woman in the photograph wasn't a memory. She was alive. The text beneath made my hands shake. He tried to kill me too. I survived. So can you. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., Riverside Park, East Bench. Come alone, or don't come at all.
E.
I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Roger's first wife. Dead 5 years. Except she wasn't dead. She was living, breathing, reaching out to me from beyond the grave he'd dug for her. I called Vincenzo. He answered on the first ring. You got the message. Not a question. You knew. My voice came out strangled. You knew Elena was alive? My intelligence network found her 4 months ago.
Portland.
Living under the name Sarah Mitchell. His tone was matter-of-fact, clinical. I was waiting for the right moment. The right moment? I wanted to scream. She's proof that Roger has done this before. She's more than that. She's a witness. Legal evidence, not just criminal leverage. I heard him moving, the sound of a car door closing. Elena testified against Roger's organization 5 years ago, but the case fell apart. She has documentation, recordings, financial records. Things that could destroy him in court, not just in the streets. Then why didn't she? Because Roger is protected. The Calabrese syndicate buried her evidence, threatened her family, made her disappear was her only option. Vincenzo's voice hardened. But now Roger's vulnerable. He skimmed from the wrong people. Elena sees an opening. She wants revenge. She wants justice. There's a difference. I looked at the photograph again, at Elena's haunted eyes. Meeting her tomorrow is insane. Thursday morning, less than 24 hours before Roger plans to kill me. Which is exactly why it's brilliant. He'll never expect you to make a move that close to his endgame. Vincenzo paused. But you're right about the danger. Roger's surveillance network is extensive. I'll have 2 of my men shadow you from a distance. They'll intervene if anything goes wrong. And if Roger suspects something, the silence stretched too long. Then he'll accelerate the timeline, Vincenzo finally said. The accident happens tomorrow instead of tomorrow night. You'll be dead before we can stop him. I closed my eyes, seeing that coroner's report with my name printed in cold, official letters. Seeing Elena's portrait with its lie of a death date. Seeing Isabel's messages about Monaco and freedom. I'm meeting her, I said. Lori. Roger has already killed 1 wife and gotten away with it. I won't let him make it 2. I ended the call before Vincenzo could argue. The photograph glowed on my screen. Elena Rivera, the ghost who survived, reaching across 5 years of silence to offer me what I needed most. Hope. And a witness to prove that monsters could be stopped. The woman sitting on the park bench looked like a ghost wearing someone else's skin. Silver streaked through her black hair like lightning frozen mid-strike, and her eyes held the particular emptiness that comes from watching your own funeral from a distance. Lori's breath caught as recognition slammed into her chest, impossible and undeniable. Elena? The ghost smiled, sad and knowing. That name died 5 years ago in a house fire on Maple Street. You might have read about it. Lori's legs gave out. She sank onto the bench beside this impossible woman, this resurrection, her mind frantically trying to reconcile the obituary she'd seen, the closed casket service, the way Roger had held her hand through the funeral with what was sitting beside her now, breathing and real. Roger told me you were his cousin. That you'd been murdered by criminals, yes. Home invasion. Very tragic. Elena's voice carried the flat effect of someone who'd rehearsed this story too many times. 2 shots to the chest, house burned to cover the evidence. Except the criminals were Roger's men, and the invasion was scheduled. The world tilted. Lori gripped the bench, feeling splinters dig into her palms, needing the pain to anchor her to reality. I found out about the money laundering, Elena continued, staring out at the river like she was watching memories play across the water. Stumbled on files in his office that showed millions moving through shell corporations. I was young, stupid, righteous. Told him I was going to the FBI. Her laugh was bitter. I actually thought our marriage meant something. That love would matter more than money. What happened? Roger looked at me like I'd already stopped existing. Said he'd handle it. 3 days later, his men came. Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her chest, tracing scars hidden beneath her jacket. Carlos was one of his shooters. He'd worked security at our wedding, always been kind. When it came time to pull the trigger, he aimed for my vest instead of my head. Made it look real enough for the others. Lori's throat closed around the question she didn't want to ask. The fire? Carlos dragged me to the basement, broke the window from outside to make it look like escape, then carried me 3 blocks before I woke up. Underground doctor. Fake death certificate. WITSEC entry through testimony against the Sinaloa family. Completely unrelated case, but it got me protection without flagging Roger's operation. Elena finally looked at Lori, and the grief there was oceanic. I've been Sarah Mitchell for 5 years. Living in Portland, working at a bookstore, watching from 3,000 miles away as Roger found another young woman to marry. Another victim who didn't know she was already dead. The blocked number suddenly made hideous sense. Roger had practiced this before, perfected his technique. He knew exactly how to erase a wife. Why didn't you warn me? Lori's voice cracked. I tried. Anonymously, carefully. You think those wrong number calls were accidents? The unsigned letters. Elena's hands trembled. But you loved him. I could see it in the society page photos. And who would believe a dead woman? Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, growing closer. Elena tensed, that hypervigilance of the perpetually hunted flickering across her features. He's going to kill you, Lori. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever the insurance timing is perfect. Just like he killed me. She gripped Lori's wrist with desperate strength. So, we need to kill him first. The mansion felt different now that Lori knew she'd never see it again. Every marble surface, every carefully curated piece of art, every room where she'd played the role of devoted wife, all of it was a stage set waiting to be struck. She moved through the space like an actress running lines one final time before the curtain fell. Excited for Wisconsin? Roger's voice drifted from the bedroom as she folded clothes with meticulous care. So excited. The lie tasted like champagne at that party, expensive and poisonous. I've already packed your favorite sweater. The cabin will be cold at night. She could feel his eyes on her back, searching for cracks in her performance. But Lori had learned from the best. 3 years of marriage to a monster had taught her how to lie with her entire body. Roger kissed her temple before leaving, his lips cold against her skin. 2 hours. Just meeting with Chun about the quarterly reports. The moment his car cleared the gate, Lori transformed. She had 120 minutes to access a safe that should be impenetrable, copy evidence that could bury an empire, and maintain the fiction that she was still the naive wife packing for a romantic getaway. The study alarm disarmed easily. Alexei had trained her well, his gruff voice echoing in her memory as her fingers flew across the keypad. The safe loomed behind Roger's desk, matte black and merciless, demanding biometric proof she couldn't provide. Except she could. 3 days of careful collection, wine glasses swabbed and sealed, utensils pocketed after dinner, and one terrible night photographing Roger's iris while he slept, the flash disguised as her phone's dim screen. Sophia's team had worked miracles with gelatin and specialized contacts that made Lori's eyes burn as she slipped them in. The fingerprint scanner accepted the replica on the second try. The retinal scan took longer, Lori holding her breath as red light swept across her borrowed iris pattern. Then, a soft click that sounded like salvation. Inside, the evidence of her death was neatly organized. The black ledger sat on top. Years of transactions, shell companies, blood money given ledger lines, and accounting codes. $500,000 in cash, rubber-banded and clinical. Multiple passports with Roger's face and different names. And beneath it all, handwritten on cream stationery, timeline. Lori's hands shook as she read her own murder itemized like a business plan. Day 1. Depart for Wisconsin cabin. Day 2. Evening hike, stage fall from cliff. Day 3. Discover body, call authorities. Day 7. Tearful funeral. Day 30. Insurance, claim filed. He'd even noted the weather forecast. Wanted rain for better alibis. The camera Sophia provided transmitted each page silently, digital evidence flowing to Vincenzo and Elena's FBI contact even as Lori photographed the ledger with methodical precision. She was on page 47 when she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy. Familiar. Roger's voice carried from the foyer. Forgot my briefcase. Lori's heart stopped. 53 pages left. The safe still open. Gelatin fingerprint on the scanner. Contact lenses, making her eyes water. She had maybe 15 seconds before he reached the study door. Roger's footsteps stopped outside the study door. Lori's mind fractured into 1,000 calculations, each one ending with her blood on his expensive carpet. The safe gaped open behind her like an accusation, the timeline still clutched in her trembling hands. The door swung wide. For one infinite second, their eyes met. She watched him process the scene, his wife in his sanctum, too close to his secrets, something wrong in the air between them like ozone before lightning strikes. Then Lori smiled, that practiced expression of devotion she'd perfected over 3 years, and slid an anniversary card across his desk. I want to hide a love note for you to find while we're away. Something romantic. Her voice didn't shake. That surprised her. Remember this? Our first anniversary. Roger picked up the card, his eyes scanning the years-old sentiment she'd repurposed for this exact contingency. She could see the gears turning behind his carefully neutral expression, suspicion warring with the comfortable belief that she was still his naive, adoring wife. His face softened. Microscopically, but enough. You're sentimental today, he said, and she heard the relief underneath the affection. He believed her. But in that moment before his mask returned, Lori saw something that made her stomach turn. Genuine regret. Some small part of Roger actually wished he didn't have to kill her, which somehow made it infinitely worse. They should have left for Wisconsin at 5. At 4:45, Lori's carefully orchestrated allergic reaction began. The shellfish from lunch that had never actually touched her lips, the mild emetic she'd injected in the bathroom producing violent, genuine illness. Roger's private doctor confirmed her symptoms while Lori retched into crystal bowls, her performance aided by actual pharmacology. The trip postponed. 24 hours bought. Exactly as planned. That night, while Roger believed her sleeping off the illness, Lori met Elena and FBI agent Maria Torres in a safe house that smelled like stale coffee and justice. The RICO indictments covered the desk like a paper trail to Roger's grave. The Moretti family's testimony, Vincenzo's leaked ledger spreading through Chicago's underworld like a virus, every rival family suddenly knowing exactly how much Roger had stolen from them. Tomorrow, Torres said. 3 a.m. You're sure you want to watch? Lori had never been more sure of anything. She stood across the street as federal agents transformed her former prison into a crime scene. Watched Roger emerge in handcuffs, his Hermes robe incongruous with the steel at his wrists. His eyes swept the crowd reflexively, the way powerful men always assess their surroundings. Then he saw her, standing in the shadows, backlit by red and blue strobes, very much alive and very clearly the architect of his destruction. His face went through shock, rage, comprehension, and finally, terrifyingly, something like pride. Vincenzo materialized beside her, his presence solid and grounding. Witness protection with Elena. New life, clean slate. Or stay in Chicago under my family's protection, learn the business from someone who will actually teach you instead of using you. The mansion's lights painted everything in shades of endings and beginnings. Lori thought about running, about safety, about the woman who'd walked into that fundraiser believing silence equaled survival. That woman was dead. I'm staying, she said, and meant it with every fiber of the person she'd become. I'm done being underestimated. Vincenzo's smile was sharp with approval. Good. You'll need a new name. Lori Rivera died tonight, too. She watched them load Roger into a federal vehicle, his eyes still locked on hers even as the door closed between them. No, she said softly. Lori Rivera finally started living.